Brock Purdy looks ready to put this 49ers team on his back. This is the instant reaction from the final practice before the 49ers head down to Vegas to face the Raiders. And Purdy was insane today. 14 of 17. One of his passes was a touchdown to Dominick, the offensive lineman. It actually tipped off of Kyle Juszczyk and Puni ran into the end zone. That was just one of many highlights for Purdy and the offense, which I'll tell you about today. Also included some George Kittle deep passes. Wait till you hear about that one. How about Jacob Cowing, though? He's back at 49ers practice, strained his hamstring day one during warm-ups. So he was back out there today. They're working Jacob in slowly. You could see Brandon Ayuk. We'll have more on him later. He's wearing that red shirt. He is very much as much of a participant as he can be at 49ers practice. There's the Hulk, Sebastian Valdez. Robert Saleh had some complimentary words about Valdez, the undrafted free agent, rising up the 49ers depth chart. It's going to be a big week for him in Vegas. Going to have a chance to get some more action against the twos, maybe even some action against the ones. There's Purdy, who was so good today, thrown to Russell Gage. He made a couple catches. We've talked a lot about Russell. With all these injuries in the 49ers receiver room, I think Russell is an odds-on favorite to make that 53-man roster, and he's been practicing very well throughout all of training camp. So has DeMarcus Robinson. You saw Ricky Pearsall there in the back. Tariq Owens, a little check-in on Tariq. Here he is during warm-ups, running a route, making a catch. And guess who else is running around during warm-ups? That is Brandon Ayuk. He's doing whatever he can within the means of safety as he comes back from the torn ACL and the MCL. But I can say that he's a much more involved participant now than he was a year ago at this time when the contract situation was not yet resolved. And there's a look at Mr. Kittle himself, who was really good today as well. So a couple of Brock Purdy to George Kittle connections today absolutely stood out. The first one, since the 49ers were playing the Raiders, I thought that it was fitting. It was just a rope over the middle, about 20 yards over the middle, and Purdy had to shuffle a bit in the pocket, and then he unleashed the pass, and it was a skinny post, and Kittle was about a step beyond Jair Brown, who got some first-team safety snaps today, next to Marquise Siegel, the rookie, who's gotten first-team safety snaps 2 days in a row. And Kittle had to reach out a little bit, and he bobbled it a tiny bit. I mean, the throw led Kittle. It was perfect where it had to be, but Kittle couldn't quite handle it immediately, and then he pulled it in, and he sprinted off. And it reminded me of Thursday Night Football when the 49ers beat the Raiders 34-3 here at Levi's Stadium, right above me, in 2018. Remember, Kittle, I don't think he scored on the play. I think he ended up getting caught, but it was a 60-plus yard gain. There was also the one against the Cowboys, happened to be here at Levi's as well, in the playoffs when George Kittle, it was like the 12-yard catch, right? He made first contact with the football at like the 40-yard line, and then he caught the football at the Dallas 48, 12 yards later after all the bobbles and kicks and whatever happened. That was a huge play in a playoff game. Anyway, this was a little cleaner than that, but it was spectacular Purdy to Kittle. Then Purdy to Kittle was even better on a deep pass also against Jair Brown, where Brock, he couldn't have run up to George and handed it to him in a more perfect spot. It wasn't terrible coverage from Jair Brown. I mean, he was right on George Kittle, but a perfect throw is going to beat good coverage in this league. And that ball, I mean, Purdy just spun it right where it had to be. Again, part of a 14 of 17 day. Brock looks absolutely locked in. I know that I'm saying this a lot. That's because that's what's happening at these practices. And if you look at the larger context of things, the 49ers have a young defense. That defense is not expected to be elite, at least out of the gate this year. They're just hoping they're a little bit better than last year's unit, which really fell off terribly at the end of the season, and that naturally puts a lot of pressure on the 49ers offense to be the locomotive that drives this train. On top of that, the 49ers receiving core is decimated right now. You just saw Brandon Ayuk running around in sweatpants. I know that other 49ers receivers like Jawan Jennings and most recently Jordan Watkins are not at practice. So if you just project this forward, if some of these issues continue to the start of the regular season, it naturally puts a whole lot of pressure on Brock Purdy. But I think that the 49ers offense is going to still hold up its end of the bargain because of how he's performing right now. He, again, looks absolutely locked in. The throws to Kittle are just one example. Breaks are even falling Brock Purdy's way, because we saw with the Dominick Puni play, that obviously wasn't scripted, but it became the 49ers' practice version of the immaculate reception. Ball deflects off of Juszczyk, bounces back to big number 77, second-year right guard, and he sprints into the end zone. A little bit after that, Brock Purdy found Christian McCaffrey in the flat. McCaffrey scored the touchdown behind George Kittle's blocking. He hands George the football, and George, who was very emotive today, he loves the practice, right? He's just very passionate about the sport. George spun the ball up in the air in front of the crowd, and everybody went crazy. That was after the two long touchdown passes that I talked about. The second one, the truly beautiful one, ended with George Kittle punting the ball in celebration, something that he obviously can't do in a regular season game without getting penalized. But hell, today at practice in front of the fans, George Kittle was certainly bringing some energy. Ben Bartch appeared to get hurt. He left practice about midway through, and he was replaced at left guard on the first team by the rookie 7th-round pick, Connor Colby. So remember when I made that prediction about, 2 months ago at this point, maybe right after the NFL draft? After watching Connor Colby's tape, he was such a good run blocker at Iowa. I said that at some point this year, he's going to be pressed into first-team duty for the 49ers. They're going to need him not because he is going to win the starting left guard or right guard spot right out of bed, but because there's attrition, and the 49ers generally have been healthy along the offensive line. The injuries have been happening elsewhere, but we saw something happen to Ben Bartch today, and he's somebody who's going to have to prove that he can stay healthy, and if he doesn't, well, it looks like Connor Colby, who had a very good preseason debut for the 49ers, is the first in the pecking order to take that left guard position, which is notable because Nick Zakelj began training camp when Bartch was still on NFI as the 49ers' first-team left guard. Zakelj's obviously moved down the pecking order. Colby has moved up. The 49ers have talked about being surprised by how good of a pass blocker he is. And I think they were also impressed by Drew Moss, who's the other rookie guard picked up over the course of this offseason. He's an undrafted free agent out of Colorado State. In fact, Colby and Moss were the 49ers' two highest graded offensive players in the preseason opener the other day against the Denver Broncos. So just take that for what it's worth. Plus the fact that Kyle Shanahan lauded how both of those guys blocked. I think that there's true movement that we're seeing at practice. I mean, they're already entrenched, it seems to me, at the second team left guard and right guard positions, Colby and Moss respectively, but Colby got that call to finish practice with the first team, which I think is a significant step. Remember that last year Dominick Puni started as a rookie, and back in 2023, Spencer Burford started or that was back in 2022, Spencer Burford started as a rookie for the 49ers. It's been a while now at this point. So this is all a developing situation. 49ers, if they have Ben Bartch healthy, are happy with the starting five of their offensive line, but Bartch has dealt with quite a few injuries in his career, and they may have to knock on the door of depth. And Connor Colby today definitely answered that call for the final stretch of practice. All right, let's talk about everything else that happened at practice here under the glorious sunshine in Santa Clara. Talk about George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey was obviously part of the play on which he blocked toward the end of practice. Christian was also part of several successful running plays for San Francisco. The offense definitely ahead of where the defense is, especially on days that Nick Bosa gets off. And the 49ers were really able, I thought, to open up some holes in the run game. And then when Christian McCaffrey can hit the edge with the way that he's running right now, look out. That could be a big gain, because then he gets out into space and he can put his signature moves on you, and that's obviously where Christian McCaffrey is at his most dangerous. Mac Jones continues to play well for the 49ers at that QB2 position. Thought that there was a really good pass today on a little crosser from Mac Jones to Junior Bergen. And Bergen is somebody, Kyle Shanahan yesterday said that he has surprised the 49ers with how successful he has been as a receiver. And we know that they have looked at him as somebody who can make this team as a specialist, and he had that nice punt return against the Broncos the other day, but it rarely happens that we see a practice go by without Junior Bergen making at least one catch. He's dropped a couple. I know that he dropped one in the game from Carter Bradley against Denver, but he's holding on to a whole heck of a lot more than he's dropping, and I think that he runs decent routes. And some of the skills that he shows as a punt returner with his feel for space, I think can translate over into a slot-like receiver position. And especially because the 49ers have so many injuries at receiver, I think that he's getting more reps and more opportunity to show, hey, I should be on this 53-man roster. Now, we'll see more from the punt return perspective. I think that's still Junior Bergen's main ticket. But look out for this guy because he continues to show up practice in, practice out. Second team had a bad snap today from Matt Hennessy, the backup center. And, this is just an offensive line machination thing that I wonder about. If Moss and Colby are both going to make the 53-man roster, because it seems they're both rising, right? Colby, I would say for sure at this point, now that he's the first sub in at left guard. But if both those guys are going to make it ahead of Nick Zakelj, how do the 49ers handle backup center behind Jake Brendel? Because Zakelj, as far as I understand, is the 49ers backup center alongside Matt Hennessy, who had the bad snap today. Are they able to stash Hennessy on the practice squad? Is that something that might work for the 49ers? They poached Hennessy off of Atlanta's practice squad last year, so they actually had him on the 53-man roster. So I'm starting to think about numbers. You'll notice that my 53-man roster projection is going to drop soon up on the San Francisco Standard, and then we'll cover it in video form as well. So make sure you're all subscribed, alarm bell, everything, so you're ready for that. But when I talk about 53-man roster numbers, I think about guys who have multi-positional adaptability. And in the context of the offensive line, the interior especially, it's who can play center, who can be that backup. Just noteworthy today that we did see that bad snap from Matt Hennessy. Robbie Chosen. Yesterday, Kyle Shanahan said that Robbie's in much better shape than he was last year in his 15-day stint with the 49ers. It started around this time. It was August 12th to August 27th last year. And at the end of it, they told Robbie, hey, we're going to cut you, but we'd like to bring you back to the practice squad. And he said, well, I'd rather go to Miami because I could be on their 53-man roster. And obviously, the story has led back here to Santa Clara for Robbie Chosen. Didn't play all too much with Miami last year. I think he might have had a catch on the entire season. He's making more plays now than he did last year for sure. Today he caught one from Mac Jones that it was a nice deep corner where Robbie Chosen's speed was on good display. He's 32 now. Maybe he doesn't run a 4.3 anymore. He ran a 4.3 when he was coming out of Temple about a decade ago. But the fact that Shanahan noted that he was in better shape yesterday, I thought was something to keep in mind. And then I also definitely noticed that Kyle Shanahan acknowledged the state of the receiver room yesterday. And he said, last year Robbie Chosen didn't have much of a chance to make the 53. That's why we told him early, hey, practice squad is probably the way that it's going to go. This year he's got a legitimate chance. And how they fill out the back of that room is going to depend on so many things that I talked about in depth on both of those shows yesterday. But definitely keep Robbie Chosen's name in the mix. Corey Kiner, man, that guy runs hard. Snap in, snap out. I think that the 49ers are one injury away at running back from essentially guaranteeing a 53-man roster spot to Corey Kiner. Right now, it's still a crowded room despite all the guys who are down. He ran well on Saturday. The 49ers feel that there's some technical things he can still improve on at this level, but the effort is something that you really can't teach. The desire is just got to be there, and I think that Corey definitely has it for San Francisco. Diamaro Lenoir, when Richard Sherman was here the other day, was a guest on Richard's podcast, and he said he's going to be the best covered corner in the NFL this year. So, take that for what it's worth. We know that Demo's always had a lot of confidence, but he's also backed a lot of it up, and he's improved every year. And if he can focus on the outside this year, that might be able to take his game to yet another level. I know that we haven't seen Upton Stout in a couple days. They hope that he's going to be back on Thursday when the practice against the Raiders happens. But if Upton Stout can take over that nickelback position and allow Lenoir to be on the outside, well, boy, 49ers might see the best of Diamador Lenore, and that's what he told Richard Sherman. He said that this is going to be his best year, and he's going to be the very best in the league. And it just goes along the theme of the 49ers stars are going to have to shine this year. We know they've got a lot of youth on defense. We know they have a lot of injuries at the receiver position. Well, what does that mean? It means that Purdy's got to be a centerpiece, A-list pillar that we talk about, and he's got to play like it. Kittle, who did today, McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, those guys have to anchor the offensive side of the ball. Ricky Pearsall might be able to join that group before Brandon Ayuk returns based on how he's practicing. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it's all about Nick Bosa, it's about Fred Warner, and it's about Diamador Lenore. So if he can play as a true A-list pillar, and the 49ers paid him like one last November, then that's what can shepherd this defense along into the unit that the 49ers need it to be, especially when the time comes. Oh my goodness, do you know who was really good today? He is just striking the ball well. Jake Moody. Moody, I mean, I had him at 7 of 7 kicks. It might have been 8, but he didn't miss, I know that. And he, backing up all the way past 50 yards, there was one from about 40 that I thought he missed just because they put the goalpost in the middle of the field, so there was plenty of grass behind it. He kicked it so far, it went like a good 30, 35 yards past the goalpost that from the side angle, it looked like he missed, but then the ref said that it was good. So I don't think there was one that was close to missing for Jake Moody, and he's just confident, and I know that he didn't have a chance to kick a field goal on Saturday against the Broncos. I'm sure the 49ers would have liked that. He only had the extra point opportunity after the first touchdown, but perhaps we'll see Jake Moody actually kick in a game on Saturday at Allegiant Stadium, where he's made one of the biggest kicks of his life. That was the 50-plus yarder that put the 49ers ahead late in that Super Bowl, but he also missed a very key extra point in that Super Bowl. So high and a low for Jake Moody has occurred in Vegas, where he is going to kick next. Defensively, you know, what's really interesting to me is that today Jair Brown had a chance to go with that first team. It's not easy to cover George Kittle. Twice we saw Jair Brown get beaten by George Kittle on sensational plays, throws and catches from Brock Purdy. But when Jason Pinnock is out there, and that was the case on Monday where we saw Pinnock next to Marquise Siegel, Jair Brown had been relegated to some second-team duty. How do the 49ers play this at the cutdown? Because right now, Malik Mustafa's not healthy yet. So I think that Jair is one of their top 4 safeties. But obviously, I mean, this is something that I've been talking about now for a few days. It seems to me that there's an odd man out vibe happening there, just because Pinnock is definitely a solid guy. I think Mustafa, by just nature, is going to be a solid guy because he was the 49ers' best safety last year, so he's going to carry that torch when he comes back from the ACL tear. And Marquise Siegel, drafted as a solid guy. I mean, Robert Saleh was talking about Marquise in his press conference today after practice, said that his 0 to 60 is sensational. And he said the big question with him, since he's slightly undersized, is how well does he tackle? Does he not give up leaky yardage because he's, you know, trying to bring down some guys who might have a physical, like, size advantage against him? And I think that Siegel started answering those questions very, very affirmatively with the 7-tackle performance against the Denver Broncos, and that's thrust him into this first-team action at practice, and it's moved Jair Brown. Today, Jair is back with the ones instead of Pinnock, but if it's moved Jair Brown when both Pinnock and Marquise Siegel have been available into that second-team spot. Now, there's still a long way to go, still about 3 weeks of training camp, so we'll see how the 49ers play the rotations here, but I'm just noting how things have evolved under Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator. You know, Robert, he said one more thing today. Somebody asked him about all the blitzing, which is something that we've noticed at practice, which is something that we saw very, very clearly during the game, especially with Chase Lucas when he forced that safety. Robert Saleh said that in 2019, the reason we didn't blitz a whole lot is because that was one of the best defensive lines in the history of the sport. Now this year, it's very obvious that the 49ers are going to have to be more creative to bring pressure. The defensive line, like, nobody is pretending that it's as good as 2019 or even as good as some of the subsequent seasons where the 49ers had some more talent. They hope to develop that defensive line into that, but the first goal needs to be to stop the run, which was the story of so many of their draft picks. But beyond all that, they're still going to have to find ways to manufacture some pressure. I think that we saw first traces of that strategy from Robert Saleh against the Denver Broncos, with him sending D. Winters, with him sending the nickelback Chase Lucas, and I think that we'll see much more of that moving into the future. So, crazy day. Brock Purdy looking like an MVP candidate, which he is. I mean, Brock Purdy is one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's playing like it, 14 of 17 at practice. Looks like he's ready to put this team on his back if he needs to. That's it. We're headed to Vegas next. We'll have a lot of content between now and then, so hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Flying to Vegas tomorrow around midday. Joint practice with the Raiders on Thursday from their facility in Henderson. So we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for watching.